Have you ever looked at someone with high status, someone who seems to have it all, the wealth, the respect, the admiration, and thought, they must be happy? It's what we're taught to believe, that happiness is a reward at the end of success. That once you reach the top, life will finally feel complete. But reality doesn't always match the story. In fact, many of those at the top feel lost, even miserable. They may have everything we're told to chase, but still wake up with a sense of emptiness they can't explain. We think success brings peace, but often it only brings more pressure, more noise, more expectations. So the question is, when is happiness really something we find at the end of the race? Or is it something we've overlooked in the middle of the chase? Modern thinking tells us to chase. Chase goals, chase wealth, chase recognition, as if happiness is something earned by constant pursuit. But in that chase, something happens. We get so focused on getting somewhere, we forget to ask why we're running in the first place. We confuse movement with meaning and noise with fulfillment. Success becomes a performance, not a reflection of who we really are. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer challenged this idea. He believed true happiness doesn't come from the outside, not from status, not from approval, but from within. To him, chasing social rewards was like chasing shadows. The more you reach, the more they slip away. He asked us to stop running, to turn inward and ask a deeper question. What if the life we're chasing is the very thing keeping us from peace? Status and money can feel good at first. They give us a hit of satisfaction, a rush of pride, a new title, a luxury home, a room full of applause. It feels like we've made it, but that feeling doesn't last. It fades, just like the thrill of a new car or the glow of a freshly renovated life. Why? Because what we're feeding isn't peace, it's craving. Schopenhauer called it the will, an endless blind drive inside every human being. Even when we reach a goal, the will doesn't rest. It just moves the target. It whispers, you need more, keep going. So we chase again, not because we're fulfilled, but because we're restless, unsatisfied. We think we've won, but instead we've only entered the next round of a game that never truly ends. And the more we feed it, the louder it gets, until silence feels unbearable and stillness feels like failure because we've forgotten how to just be. But here's the hard truth. Chasing without peace leads to exhaustion, not fulfillment. When status becomes the goal, not a byproduct of purpose, we lose our center. The applause gets louder, but the silence inside grows deeper. We smile in public, but wrestle with anxiety in private, trying to hold an image while our soul slips away. Because without inner balance, success isn't freedom. It's pressure dressed as prestige. It looks powerful on the outside, but feels like walking a tightrope. Every step a calculation, every moment a performance. You're not living, you're managing. And that's when things unravel. Take Howard Hughes, billionaire, icon, legend in aviation and film. He had it all: planes, empires, attention. But behind closed doors, fear ruled him. Terrified of germs, isolated, trapped in a prison of his own mind. Wealth didn't free him. It amplified his loneliness. It gave him control over the world, but not himself. Because no success quiets a restless mind, no applause soothes a soul that's never known peace. We often think, if I could just get to the top, I'd finally be free. Free to choose, free to live on my own terms. But that's the illusion. Because the higher you climb, the more you owe. More eyes watching, more hands pulling, more rules. And suddenly that success starts to feel like a cage. Not of steel, but of expectation. You're expected to lead, to deliver, to impress, even when you're falling apart inside. That's not freedom. That's performance with no intermission. And Schopenhauer saw it clearly. He believed real freedom doesn't come from power. It comes from letting go of needing it, from stepping away from the noise and tuning into something quieter, something deeper, inner stillness. Because as long as you're chasing approval, you're not living your truth. You're living someone else's version of who you should be. But here's the catch. When your worth depends on applause, you're never really free. You become trapped in a loop, always needing to prove, always needing to perform. Every room you walk into becomes a stage. Every silence feels like judgment. You start bending not because it's who you are, but because it's what's expected. And slowly, piece by piece, you lose touch with the person beneath the persona. Schopenhauer called this the greatest danger. Not losing the world, but losing yourself. Because when you live for recognition, you hand over your soul for approval. You're seen by everyone, but known by no one, not even yourself. Take Robin Williams. Loved by millions, celebrated around the world, but inside battling a loneliness no spotlight could fix. Success gave him the world, but couldn't give him peace. Because no matter how bright the stage, it can never light the shadows you refuse to face. And if you can't be still with yourself, you'll never feel free no matter how high you climb. We chase the world, but in the process we lose ourselves. Somewhere between the titles and the trophies, the real you starts fading. You stop asking what you want and start asking what they expect. And that's when the emptiness creeps in. Not because you're weak, but because you've been living too far from your center. Schopenhauer warned us, when we ignore the self, we create a silence inside that no noise can fill. You might be admired, respected, even envied. But if you can't hear your own voice anymore, what good is all that praise? Fame can connect you to millions, but disconnect you from the one person who matters most, yourself. That's the paradox. In chasing connection, we often sacrifice authenticity. And when you trade truth for image, you might gain the world, but lose your soul along the way. Because in the end, it's not about how many people know your name. It's about whether you still recognize the face in the mirror. Even the most powerful men can feel like strangers in their own story. Because when your life is built on image, truth becomes a threat. Michael Jackson had everything: fame, fortune, a fan base that spanned the globe. But behind the lights was a man searching for love, craving connection, and haunted by the feeling that no one truly saw him. Not the icon, the human. He built a kingdom but couldn't find a home inside himself. Every stage got bigger, but his world grew lonelier. This is what happens when we become more brand than being, more legend than life. We forget how to sit in silence, to breathe without performing, to look in the mirror without needing applause, to listen inward, to ask, am I still me, or just who they want me to be? Because the crowd may cheer, but your soul only whispers. And if you stop listening one day, you'll forget what it sounds like. And when that happens, it's not success you're living. It's a beautiful kind of disappearance. We spend years chasing a life that looks impressive, but forget to ask, does it feel right? Success can fill your calendar, but it doesn't always fill your soul. And that's where Schopenhauer draws the line. He tells us, peace doesn't come from the world, it comes from stepping back from it. Because the more we seek approval, the more we drift from authenticity. So how do we find our way back? By turning inward, by listening to what's quiet but true, by asking what actually matters to me. Happiness, he said, isn't a prize, it's a practice, not earned in crowds but discovered in stillness, in the space where we stop chasing and start choosing. Choosing simplicity, choosing presence, choosing a life that makes sense to you even if no one claps for it. Because true freedom isn't loud, it's calm, and real fulfillment doesn't shout, it whispers. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. So how do we begin? Not by changing the world, but by changing how we see it. Schopenhauer believed that fulfillment starts with perspective, not with having more, but with wanting less. He taught us to trade comparison for contentment and ambition for awareness. To stop measuring life by the noise it makes and start feeling it in the quiet. Because when you pause long enough, you realize the little things were never little. A slow morning, a deep breath without a deadline, a walk without a destination, a conversation that's real, a moment of stillness without the need to prove anything. These are not distractions from success, they're the definition of it. So start small, look inward, breathe deeper, be present with what you already have. Notice what already brings you peace and choose more of that. Because fulfillment doesn't arrive all at once. It's built breath by breath in the spaces we usually overlook. Not outside you, but within you, waiting to be seen. We fear being alone, But what if solitude isn't something to escape, but something to embrace? Schopenhauer didn't see solitude as loneliness, but as clarity. A chance to hear the one voice we ignore most, our own. Because when the world goes quiet, truth finally speaks. In solitude, you're not performing, not proving, just being. It strips away the noise, the roles, the masks, and what's left isn't emptiness, it's essence. The parts of you that aren't for sale, not for show, but fully, quietly yours. This is where peace begins, not in crowds, but in corners. Not in applause, but in awareness. Because until you're at peace with being alone, you'll always feel lonely, even in a room full of praise. Solitude isn't silence, it's space. To breathe, to see, to return to yourself. To hear the heart beneath the rush. To feel your worth without needing approval. It's the freedom to simply be, without needing to become anything for anyone else. Real freedom doesn't come from having everything. It comes from needing less. When you're no longer chasing applause, you begin to hear your own voice again. You stop performing and start living. There's peace in simplicity, in not needing to impress, in not measuring your worth by the crowd's reaction. Schopenhauer believed that stepping away from the noise was the first step toward clarity, and few embodied that better than Henry David Thoreau. He left the noise behind, retreated into the woods, and found something most never do: stillness, solitude, and a deeper kind of joy, not from luxury, but from living in alignment with himself. He didn't need more. He needed less distraction, less pressure, less pretending. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose a quiet life in a world that never stops shouting. True strength, Schopenhauer said, isn't about controlling the world. It's about mastering yourself. Self-control isn't just willpower, it's clarity. The ability to feel anger but not act from it, to feel desire but not be ruled by it. It's choosing response over reaction, stillness over chaos, truth over impulse. Because the real battle isn't out there, it's in here. And the man who wins that fight walks through life untouched by noise. But this kind of power only comes through self-awareness. You can't steer your life if you don't know who's holding the wheel. You have to know yourself, your fears, your wants, your patterns. Not to judge, but to understand. Because lasting happiness isn't built on control, it's built on understanding. And once you see yourself clearly, you stop chasing more and start choosing better. So what truly matters? When we're no longer ruled by society's noise, no longer chasing the wants the world hands us, that's when clarity begins. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that whispers in stillness, reminding us of what actually brings peace. Because the moment you stop living for them, you start living for you. And that's where meaning takes root. Not in the spotlight, but in alignment. Not in applause, but in authenticity. Think about the great minds. Kant, who lived in quiet routine. Nietzsche, who walked alone with his thoughts. They didn't conform. They carved their own path. Not to impress, but to express. They found happiness not in having everything, but in knowing what they valued most, and living by it unapologetically. That's what real freedom looks like, to choose a life that makes sense to you even if the world doesn't understand it. Because in the end, it's not about being seen by everyone. It's about being true to someone, yourself. And once you find that, you're no longer chasing peace, you're living it. Real happiness can't be handed to you. It's not in a gift, a title, a compliment. It's something you build from the inside out. Because the moment you rely on the world to make you feel whole, you give it the power to break you. Schopenhauer knew lasting peace comes from within. Not from what you get, but from who you become. So stop waiting for permission to feel joy. Create it, cultivate it, protect it. Learn to sit with yourself and like the person you meet. That's the foundation of self-made happiness. And it begins with how you think. Because your mindset is the lens through which you see everything. If you chase status, life becomes a competition. But if you celebrate small wins, life becomes a collection of meaning. Shift your focus from what's missing to what's here, from what they want to what you value. And suddenly life feels less like a race and more like your own path. So ask yourself, what actually matters to me? Not what I've been told to want, Not what looks good on paper, but what truly brings me peace. Because when you stop chasing what's expected, you start uncovering what's essential. The noise fades and clarity begins. You start making choices not to impress, but to align. And that's when life becomes yours again. Just look at minds like Kant or Nietzsche. They didn't follow the crowd, they followed their core. They turned inward, questioned everything, and built lives rooted in truth, not trends. They didn't need more. They needed meaning. And through solitude, struggle, and deep self-awareness, they found a freedom no praise could offer. You can do the same, not by changing your whole life overnight, but by changing what you honor in your life. And it starts with one brave question. Is this the life I truly want, or just the one I was told to live? In the end, happiness isn't found in applause, status, or recognition. It's not something the world gives you. It's something you uncover within. Schopenhauer reminds us, when we stop looking outward for meaning, we begin to find it inward. True happiness comes not from what you achieve, but from who you become in the process. It's not about how loud your life is, but how aligned it feels. Not about being admired, but about being authentic. So ask yourself, what am I really chasing? Is it mine or just what the world told me to want? Because the moment you begin to question that, you begin to take back control. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a decision, a shift in how you see, how you live, how you choose. And it starts with one simple action. Change the way you define happiness, and you change the way you experience it. So here's the real question. Can you find happiness without the chase? Can you live fully without the spotlight? Can you be proud without the title? Can you be free without anyone's permission? Schopenhauer invites us to try, to slow down, to reflect, to live from the inside out, not to escape the world, but to stop letting it define us, because the life you want might not be louder, just truer. And if this message speaks to you, don't just scroll by. Pause, reflect. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? Then take the first step, change one habit, one thought, one choice. And if you're ready to keep exploring these ideas, to dive deeper into philosophy that challenges the noise, follow this journey. Join the conversation, because sometimes one new thought can change your whole life.